So the official story of what happened on October 1st, 2018 is simple. It's cut and dry and case closed.
In a matter of seconds, a country music festival turned tragic, a storm of gunfire raining down upon an innocent crowd.
A deranged lunatic with access to millions of dollars from past businesses had finally snapped.
We were 6 floors above the gunman, who was on the 32nd floor of the hotel, firing across Las Vegas Boulevard toward the concert, the stage 400 yards from the hotel, with the crowd gathered in front, many then fleeing to the festival's main entrance.
But the more I looked into this, the more twists and turns it took, the more I fell into a disgusting rabbit hole where I realized what happened after the event was chilling and much more revealing. It's a story of corporate America. It's a story of money trails. And if we really get to the bottom of it, it's a story about how billion-dollar corporations control narratives in your everyday lives. My name is Steven. This is NLLV, No Lies, Lux Veritas. And today we're going down the rabbit hole and unwrapping the tale of what really happened on October 1st. So today we're going to start at the tip of the iceberg. These are things that everybody already knows about. But 5 questions come to mind that we're going to tear into in this video. But by the time we get to the 5th level of the same iceberg, we're going to be talking about things like foreign governments, failed attempts to take out world leaders, and why multiple witnesses ended up passing away after the fact. Let's dive right in. So on the surface of all this, we have the official narrative. This is what the FBI and Las Vegas Metropolitan Police told you happened.
No clear motive in the 1 October shooting. The FBI issuing its final report today. It offers just limited insights into what actually fueled the nation's worst shooting rampage.
99% of us would stop right here. But you're not most people, and neither am I. So what we know about Stephen Paddock is that he was 64 years old. He was living in Mesquite, Nevada, just north of Vegas, a retired accountant. He had made his millions in the past, and he was simply living the high life now. A few days before October 1st, 2017, he checked himself into the Mandalay Bay at a high roller suite, and then out of nowhere, simply fired into the Route 91 festival going on across the street. Officially, there were 10 minutes of gunfire, 58 people were unalived that day, and over 850 were injured. The FBI spent a year investigating and out of nowhere concluded that was it. No motive, just a crazy person doing horrible things. We have no idea why he did all this. That was how they summed up the biggest mass casualty event in American history. Except that answer, it has a major problem. You see, Paddock did a few strange things before all of this took place, wiring $100,000 to an account in the Philippines the day prior. His laptop hard drive went missing entirely from the crime scene. And 3 years later, MGM Resorts International ended up paying a settlement of $800 million, which all but guaranteed that nobody would ever speak in court or in public about this situation ever again. But what's really wild about all this is that there are links to the Saudi government in an attempt to take out one of their leaders linked to the entire situation. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you all about that in a moment. We're going to get right into the nitty-gritty right after a word from our sponsor. So by the time we're finished telling the story, you're going to see how a giant Wall Street company literally bought the silence of everybody in order to cover up bad publicity. This is just par for the course for big corporations running our lives. But what if I told you that you could actually find a way to profit off these big corporate companies and actually maybe even put money in your bank doing what they do? It's called the futures market. It's something I've been doing for years and something I built an entire course around. It's called 1K a day. And in it, I have over 800 students who are doing just that. They click a button. If it goes up, they can make some money. If it goes down, they can make some money. Some of them are making 50 bucks a day. There's others making $500-$600 a day, just 15 or 20 minutes at a time, day by day. So if you want to take some of that life back that those corporations are sucking out of you, I want you to do this right away. I want you to click the first link pinned up in the first comment of this video and just type in the code NOSUCK10 because your life ain't going to suck after you figure out how to make money off the back of these giant corporate conglomerates. Look, it's $199 one time. You get my entire course, hundreds of different videos. I'm adding to it every single week. It's less than the price of a pair of AirPod Pros. And these will only get you enjoyment once in a while, and this will teach you a skill you can know for life. Do it before I raise the price up. It's going to be $2.99 or $3.50 next. So type in no suck 10, don't suck in 2026. Let that be our mantra. Send me an email when you're a student with a special email in the course. I'd love to meet you. And let's get back to how big corporate companies in Vegas can get themselves out of hot water and the crazy iceberg that sits ahead, because it's going to melt your brain like it did mine, I'm sure. But we have some massive questions that were left unanswered with all that. And every single one of these questions left unanswered put MGM Resorts International in a spot that would just cost them more and more liability. And look, these are not conspiracy theories. These are simply facts that just don't add up. Like, what about the motive or the lack thereof? Stephen Paddock was not exactly a broke guy. He wasn't down to his last few bucks in his bank account with nothing to lose. As a matter of fact, he was a man of means. $2 million in the bank account, multiple properties, regular income, investments coming in left, right, and center. And yet he left absolutely no evidence of any reason he would have for this. No manifesto, no social media rants, none of that. His girlfriend said he gave zero warning signs that anything was bothering him. And then the FBI just shrugged it all off and closed the case, saying, "We don't know. Must have just been a lone wolf." Now, like, when has that ever happened with a mass shooting? And then we get back to the security, the missing security, that is. We talk about Jesus Campos. He was the guard that got to the scene before the actual incident started. And according to timelines, Campos was shot 6 minutes before the actual incident started. Did you hear me? I said 6 minutes before everything started. Why wasn't that a warning sign that would stop everything? How secure are you in a hotel if a guard can take gunfire wounds and there's not a massive alarm that's being rung? Campos then disappeared just a few days later before he could officially be questioned for anything, moving to Mexico only to make one appearance on the Ellen DeGeneres show later. Oh, and if it matters to you, yeah, MGM Resorts International was a regular sponsor for the Ellen show and incentivized Campos in some way, shape, or form to appear on that broadcast. The lawyers for MGM carefully orchestrated that appearance, monitored his public outgoing persona, and after it was finished, he simply disappeared, never to be heard from again. And the real question is why? What did he see in that hallway that was never supposed to be released to the public? And then there's the inconvenient timelines, things that just don't measure up. The actual gunfire stopped at 10:15 p.m. Paddock was on the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Bay. Now, SWAT teams didn't actually arrive until 11:20 p.m., over an hour after the incident had officially ended. They knew the floor, they knew the room, the hotel is carefully monitored with cameras absolutely everywhere. So what exactly was the delay? And of course, by the time they breached the door and entered the room, Paddock was already gone, lying in the floor from self-inflicted wounds. And even though the hotel Mandalay Bay, like all hotels in Vegas, has literally hundreds of cameras covering every single angle of the property, not a single frame of that surveillance footage was ever released to the public. And to this day, the question remains how Paddock managed to move 23 rifles and thousands of rounds of armor into the hotel without being officially noticed. So there we have 4 massive red flags, and really, this is only the surface. Because along with the incident at the concert, there were multiple mentions of random gunfire happening on the Las Vegas Strip that very day. A public-facing website called VegasShootingMap.com conveniently chronicles all of these different incidents, many with cell phone camera footage from the time taken on the scene there to back up the claims. And it's at this point now where we look at the story as less than a series of unanswered questions and more like a giant corporate cover-up by the city, by MGM Resorts, by the powers that be, to simply suppress the truth. You might be saying, cover up, this is crazy. Well, hold on, because this is where things take a bit of a dark turn. See, because in July of 2020, not 3 years after the incident, MGM Resorts somehow came to terms with all 4,000 plus victims involved in the case and their families, announcing an $800 million settlement, non-disclosure agreements, waivers of future rights to litigation, no depositions taken from anybody involved at the incident. If you need a translation, it's that MGM Resorts International used their money to make a big problem go away. This guaranteed no depositions, no courtroom testimony, no pesky lawyers or citizen journalists poking their noses around at things, asking what really happened. And what's even better is that MGM Resorts International only paid $49 million for the incident, with insurance companies picking up $735 million of the $800 million settlement. And I don't need to tell you that for a company with the size and scope of MGM Resorts International, that's quite literally pocket change. So if the suppression of 4,400 possible lawsuits wasn't strange enough, another question that needs to be raised is the tampered with locks on Paddock's doors at the hotel. You see, when investigators showed up, they found evidence of tampering on the door locks to Stephen Paddock's suite that existed before they got to the scene. But if these existed, who had been tampering with the locks, and for what purpose exactly? The investigation, of course, doesn't explain this, just makes a note of it, simply moves on. And here's a big one that most people don't know. That very same day, at what was then called McCarran International Airport, there was an active shooter investigation. Police showed up, people were evacuated, panic ensued, and then nothing. No investigation, no mention of it on the news whatsoever. It was literally memory hold. So what exactly happened? Was there some kind of attack on Paddock? Was somebody trying to get to him before he got to everybody else? Well, we will never know, because MGM wrote a check and all of those questions magically went away. And if that seems a little uncomfortable, you ain't seen nothing yet. We're just getting to the hard questions. Because remember that map we talked about, VegasShootingMap.com? That was tied to a few people who, believe it or not, survived the attack. People who were directly involved, who were eyewitnesses, who later were unalived under strange circumstances. Take Kimberly Socomel, for example. A young lady who survived the incident firsthand posted an intensely detailed take of it and what she saw with several different muzzle flashes from different areas on social media, claiming she saw multiple shooters at the time of the incident. At 28 years of age, she died naturally in her sleep just a few weeks later. Dennis and Lorraine Carver, two other survivors of the incident, they gave interviews, questioned the timelines. Unfortunately for the Carvers, they passed away in a car fire just a few months after the incident. And finally, there was the case of Danny Contreras, a man who survived the incident firsthand, stuck around to answer questions, questioned that official narrative, and shortly after, died mysteriously. Now, is this suspicious? Is this simply the circle of life? Is this just how things sometimes play out? Maybe. But when you add it to an $800 million hush money settlement that keeps everybody quiet, it takes a different type of turn altogether, doesn't it? At this point, you're thinking, yes, there are unanswered questions. We get that. But that certainly doesn't mean it's some kind of grand conspiracy, right? And I agree. You're right. Let's all just stay grounded for a minute. And while we stay grounded, let's take a look at the money trail for Stephen Paddock. Because when you follow the money trail, it turns out the FBI story doesn't just have holes in it. It has craters the size of Alaska. And the entire thing simply collapses. So Stephen Paddock, he claimed to be a professional gambler. I mean, that was his stated income source on his tax returns. But his casino hosts will tell you that for a so-called professional gambler, he was actually quite deep in the red. He lost way more than he won. These weren't small amounts. They were significant amount of money that added up over time. The first question we might ask is, how can a man maintain a $2 million net worth while literally bleeding out money to the casinos month after month and year over year? His IRS income statements show huge amounts of money being flowed from place to place with literally no explanation whatsoever. No official sources, no employment income, just professional gambler. And that's not to mention that the day prior to the incident at Mandalay Bay, he wired $100,000 to the Philippines. But to why? To whom? To what purpose? The United States has a friendly relationship with the Philippines. I'm wondering why nobody actually looked into this to follow the money trail internationally. Sure, his girlfriend was in the Philippines at a time, but $100,000 in the Philippines? A country where the average income is $8 to $10 per day? Put it this way, why would you wire 11 years of the average Filipino salary in a single day before the incident? The FBI closed the case with no further questions. And to most of us, this would sound, of course, like money laundering, wire fraud. Added up with his consistent, mysterious gambling losses and no stated source of income. But we promised that we would stay grounded. And the good news is that we do have some recovered evidence from the scene that certainly must tell us a lot. correct? I mean, when law enforcement did get to his room, they did find his laptop in his suite. Multiple witnesses confirmed this. It's officially entered into the FBI's evidence list. But strangely enough, of that laptop, one important key feature, the hard drive, was completely missing when it was recovered. Let me be clear with you. The laptop wasn't damaged. The hard drive wasn't damaged. The hard drive was simply removed from the laptop, like Geek Squad had arrived on the scene. So who took that hard drive? What evidence was on that said hard drive? Were there communication logs, transport records, plans, a manifesto, cryptocurrency? Now, I don't know if that's an oversight or if it's an intentional omission. We'll call it what it is. A strange curiosity. And speaking of strange curiosities, we have the entire armory that Paddock had somehow managed to get into his room. 23 rifles, some with bump stocks, others without. For a man that could only fire one weapon at a time, that certainly seems like overkill to most people. Witnesses who saw that scene said that the weapons were laid out in such a fashion it made it look like a showroom, like he was trying to show them off for sale to buyers or something. Which leads us to the theory that maybe Paddock was some kind of arms dealer. I mean, a man with lots of gambling losses and no documented history at being good at gambling, no income source on his tax returns, just money moving around. Is it possible that he was involved in a deal that somehow went bad? The FBI has documented plenty of cases of these types of deals going south. Does the government operation called Fast and Furious ring a bell to any of you? That was where the US government sent guns to Mexico, lost track of them, only to have them come back and be used on the American people. So what if this was one of those operations? Was Paddock working with the FBI as an informant? Was he an asset? Was this a deal gone catastrophically wrong? I mean, that might explain why the FBI would be motivated to close the entire case and throw up their hands and say, we don't know. If you know the FBI, there's one thing they hate, and that's ever admitting failure. But why would the FBI pick a guy like Stephen Paddock, a nobody from the middle of nowhere, Nevada? Oh, when you learn about his background, a little more light is shed on the scene, and those craters in the FBI story, they keep opening wider and wider. Stephen Paddock was born to Benjamin Hoskins Paddock. Benjamin was a bank robber who was listed on the FBI's most wanted list. His father, Benjamin, escaped from prison and was on the run from the law for years. Paddock himself had a long history of government service. He worked for the IRS, worked for the Postal Service, then defense contractors. He owned rental properties across multiple states, made complex business and real estate deals go through. And he traveled internationally quite frequently, places like Philippines, Dubai, as well as other countries. Yet with all this, he had almost zero digital footprint, no social media, no presence online. And even back in 2017, it's fair to say that's just plain weird. So then the question becomes, was Paddock really an intelligence asset, an FBI informant? I mean, the profile fits, doesn't it? Government employee background, frequent international traveler. Unexplained income with zero digital footprint. Gets sent to Vegas on an operation. Operation fails. Case closed. No questions asked. Here's a big check to shut up all the survivors. But even if we try to follow the money trail and stay grounded, it makes no sense, especially for a retired accountant and a failed gambler. And it's at this point, with a complete lack of answers, zero transparency, and craters left, right, and center in the story, that we have to enter into the dark abyss. But just hear me out on this, because some of this actually makes sense and has some documented evidence behind it. And with that, we have to finally introduce a new character to our tale, MBS, aka Mohammed bin Salman, the Saudi crown prince. Now, this only matters when you take a look at things like flight logs for helicopters that were disguised as airplanes that flew over the Mandalay Bay. This only makes sense when you understand the rumors that MBS was in Vegas that weekend for a special event. And this only makes sense when you further understand that one of his friends literally owned the Four Seasons Hotel at Mandalay Bay, which sits directly where Stephen Paddock was, just a few floors above. And of course, the Saudi government has never officially confirmed that MBS was in Vegas that same weekend. But the rumors have never gone away. And here's why they still persist. Because 1 month later, MBS went on to arrest over 200 people in Saudi Arabia in what turned out to be a massive power consolidation and a struggle within the royal family and the kingdom itself. So welcome to November of 2017. It's exactly 1 month after the Mandalay Bay incident in Las Vegas. And it's at this point that MBS hosted an event and unleashed something known to the world as the Saudi Purge. With over 200 Saudi royals, government officials, and wealthy business people literally arrested in one fell swoop overnight. All of this was orchestrated by MBS himself while they were attending an event at the Ritz-Carlton in Riyadh. Some people were tortured. All of them were forced to surrender all of their assets. And we're talking hundreds of billions of dollars instantly transferred to Mohammed bin Salman in one fell swoop. The official story behind the purge was that MBS was simply trying to crack down on corruption. But the unanswered questions are whether or not this was retaliation for an incident that was supposed to play out in Las Vegas, Nevada on October 1st, just a month prior. Because if we take ourselves back to the VegasShootingMap.com website, we have stories of multiple muzzle flashes happening at the same time. Some witnesses even claimed that they saw helicopters hovering over the strip with what looked like gunfire. And then there's the footage of the evacuation at the Tropicana. Leaked security camera footage from the Tropicana showed a VIP being escorted out by armed agents. And these weren't police officers. They certainly weren't hotel security. They were armed men in tactical gear, moving with military precision. The question still remains to this day whether or not this was MBS, rushed out in the heat of the night, only to narrowly escape an assassin. And now when we tie everything together, we have what further looks like a conspiracy, doesn't it? So let's rewind the tape a little bit and replay this from that new angle. Instead of the lone shooter incident with Stephen Paddock, a man with no motive, Paddock was facilitating an arms deal with Saudi operatives in the room where he was staying. Shortly before the room, a security guard, Jose Campos, came by to simply check out the scene and do a standard wellness check. Campos saw something he wasn't supposed to see and was shot on the scene. Told not to say anything or talk in order to keep his life safe, he says nothing at all. The arms deal was actually a cover-up for an assassination attempt on MBS's life. MBS, who was apparently staying just several floors above Paddock at the time. The doors were tampered with, locks carved up in an effort to get at the scene before it actually occurred. And the arms deal was simply a pretext to get weapons into a room so close to MBS himself. And at some point, this deal went completely sideways. Either Paddock figured everything out himself, or something else went wrong, and the operatives in the room decided to simply tidy up some loose ends. And after the attempt on MBS's life went south, he was extradited out of the scene via helicopter himself. All of this would explain the strange flight paths of planes that were not planes, and the eyewitness accounts of separate muzzle flashes happening from said helicopters. This means that the shooting of the crowd itself was either a distraction, a cover-up, or trying to destroy witnesses and evidence so that nobody could talk. Narrowly escaping with his life, MBS went home and 1 month later lured everybody into the Ritz-Carlton, only to extract his revenge, show his power, and gain billions of dollars of wealth in the process. Or perhaps Stephen Paddock was just a patsy, a man put in place by his very own government, set up to simply fail. All of this led to the FBI investigation that went simply nowhere, only for them to throw up their arms and say, "We don't know," in order to protect important geopolitical associations the United States has. MGM covered up the entire situation because obviously admitting something like that played out in a city like Vegas on one of their properties, that would bury them, Vegas, and the entire travel industry in Southern Nevada for life. And here's why this theory, try as they might, will simply never die. Because this is the only theory that ties up all the ends and explains things. It explains why there's no motive, why Stephen Paddock wasn't some mastermind. It explains all the missing footage. The last thing you need is footage of armed agents extracting a foreign leader in MBS. It explains massive settlements, possibly funded by foreign governments, to shut everybody involved in the case up. And it also explains the giant purge and transfer of power in Saudi Arabia just a month later. And sadly, it also explains why those witnesses that were willing to talk, all within a matter of just a short time, all ended up unalived. Now, do I believe this theory myself? Shoot, I don't know. But what I do know is that somebody somehow came up with $800 million to buy themselves a whole lot of silence. I mean, why spend that kind of money when things could have played out in court all on the government's dime? And here's what I know to be certain. Although the LVCVA said that everything was fine afterwards, fine was about as far from the truth as you could possibly get. As somebody who made his living on the Las Vegas Strip, we felt it. Everybody felt it. There was a massive void, and the actual recovery in this town took about 6 to 9 months for things to fully come back to 100%. And for a time, every casino in Vegas started enhanced security measures until they realized that nobody wanted to go through a metal detector when they were coming to Vegas just to have fun. And all this leads back to the corporate playbook, doesn't it? MGM Resorts International came up with $49 million to cover the costs, with $751 million being covered by their insurance. And make no mistake, they didn't settle out of generosity or compassion. They settled because they didn't want any more questions asked. They wanted to kill an ongoing story that seemingly wouldn't go away. This caused things in Vegas to go up in price, whether you saw it or not. The slow creep of resort fees, the upward tick of parking costs. And whenever big corporations feel threatened, they get lawyers involved to seemingly make the problems poof, vamoose, and go away. If anything, the Vegas October 1st incident taught MGM Resorts International that they could buy silence for just $800 million. Now, we're now 8 years out from the October 1st, 2017 incident here in town, and very little has changed. The site where the incident occurred, where MGM once promised to build a memorial, the site of the incident was largely sold off to 3 affiliated Native American tribes who then paved the area and painted it with stripes so they could rent it out for parking during Raiders NFL home games here in town. The so-called Forever One Memorial seemingly is taking forever to build, with MGM promising to get construction started in 2026. All of this goes to show that the truth is inconvenient and that silence can always be bought for a price. And more importantly, in Vegas, it's not so much about your experience or getting to the bottom of things. It's about the house always winning. My name is Steven. If you're 1% smarter for watching, hit subscribe, come back to the channel, and until the next time, just keep swimming.